Hey guys, tonight we saddle up for one of the least glamorous, most underappreciated roles in one of history's greatest empires, a Mongol postal courier. You, dear listener, are no fearsome warrior or noble emissary tonight. Nope, you are the guy carrying scrolls across deserts in the cold on a horse with opinions. The wind stings your face as you clutch your satchel tighter. It's made of rawhide and smells like everything you've ever delivered. You're riding along the sprawling, empire-wide relay system built by the Mongols to link everything from the frozen steppes of Mongolia to the warm ports of the Black Sea. Think FedEx. If every delivery involved wild dogs and questionable soup, your horse plops steadily along the hardened path. This one's fresh, thankfully. The Mongols set up relay stations every 25 to 30 miles, where tired horses are swapped for rested ones, allowing dispatch riders like you to travel ridiculous distances in remarkably short times. Genghis Khan didn't just conquer, he micromanaged with astonishing efficiency. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, tell me, where are you listening from? What time is it where you are? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lean forward in the saddle, the leather creaking beneath you. Ahead lies another dusty hill. Behind you, more dusty hills. You haven't eaten since sunrise, unless you count chewing on anxiety. Your lunch, tucked neatly behind the saddlebags, awaits, a leather pouch filled with sustenance, or at least a spirited attempt. It's not glamorous work, but you are part of a machine that keeps a continent connected. Couriers like you carried military orders, census data, trade records, and probably at least a few love letters. The yam is the beating artery of the empire, and you're a cell zipping along in it, hopefully not passing out before dinner. The wind tastes of salt and dust. Somewhere a hawk cries out a sound so dramatic it might be the soundtrack to your own exhaustion. You ride past a crumbling marker stone, a relic from a prior Khan's era. Time blends out here. The landscape around you is stubbornly vast rolling steppes punctuated by small shrubs and endless sky. In spring, it's wildflowers. In winter, it's regret. This time of year, it's dry and bumpy, with the kind of silence that gets stuck in your ears. As a courier, you're allowed certain perks: immunity from taxes, shelter in any station, free meals at waypoints. But don't let the word meals get your hopes too high. Meal might mean a chunk of mutton in broth, or it might be a boiled potato someone dropped, picked up, and reboiled. But you keep riding. One more station before the midday break. That's where you'll eat. You're already tasting it: dry jerky, maybe fermented mare's milk if the station is well stocked, or if they're out, just the jerky, or if you're truly unlucky, just the scent of someone else's jerky. As your horse crests a small hill, you see it, a squat building ringed by short wooden posts. A man is out front, waving lazily, as if you're not galloping through 6 provinces. That's the relay station, your next stop, your next horse, hopefully your next meal. The man doesn't stand, but he does shout something that might be welcome, or might be weather commentary. You slide off your mount and stretch your back. The horse looks relieved to be rid of you. Not inside the station. It's dim and smells of boiled leather. A small fire crackles. You hand off your satchel. The station keeper doesn't check your ID. You're wearing the courier braid, simple, distinct, impossible to fake. He nods and gestures toward a bench. You hungry? He asks, not waiting for an answer. He plops down a small wooden bowl with a lumpy gray item inside. You poke it. It pokes back. Cheese, he says. You nod, of course. It's hard, Hage, and smells faintly of revenge, but you're grateful. It's your first bite of the day, and it's technically food. Historians still argue whether this particular Mongol cheese known as qurt was made from cow, yak, or goat milk. You're just trying to figure out if your teeth are strong enough for it. The keeper pours you something cloudy into a tin cup. Arag fermented mare's milk, fizzy, slightly sour, slightly alarming. You sip, and your tongue has questions. But it's rich in probiotics, and some writers swear it boosts stamina. Others say it's why they never married. In the corner of the room, someone's dozing in a pile of furs, another courier, probably. You wonder what scrolls they've delivered, which roads they've memorized. You think briefly about asking, then decide this cheese demands your full attention. Outside, the new horse is saddled. Your break is already nearly over. These stops are meant to be brief, just long enough to refuel both rider and steed. You chew one last bite of mystery dairy, swing into the saddle, and press onward. As the wind whistles around your ears again, you pat your pouch. One message left, one more stretch of road, and maybe, just maybe, a warm lunch ahead that doesn't fight back. Your horse trots with rhythmic certainty, as if it has memorized this part of the step. You pat its neck absently, your thoughts already drifting toward lunch, the next real one. Not the revenge cheese from earlier, that was just the opening act. The true star of Mongol courier cuisine waits in your saddlebag. You fumble behind you and pull out a thick strip of meat, darkened from smoke and time. It sports the Mongol solution to fast food. Bortz is dried mutton or beef, sliced thin and sun-cured until it loses all signs of softness. You chew thoughtfully, or more accurately, you try to convince your jaw to make progress. Mongols prized it because it lasted for months, didn't spoil, and packed a decent amount of protein plus. It doubled as a workout for your molars. You glance around. The landscape offers no tables, no shade, and absolutely zero cutlery. You're dining the same way couriers did centuries ago, on horseback, with the wind trying to snatch every crumb from your lap. Still, there's something reassuring about it. Eating like this connects you to generations of tired, underpaid riders just trying to not drop their jerky in the mud. With Bortz, hydration is essential. You reach for the goatskin pouch hanging near your knee. You give it a squeeze and watch the cloudy liquid slosh. Yes, more arag. You take a hesitant sip. The carbonation dances across your tongue in a way that reminds you this was never meant to be enjoyed in large quantities. Still, arag was more than a drink. It was a cultural staple, made by fermenting mare's milk in a leather bag which, by the way, was traditionally hung near the door so every passerby could kick it to keep the fermenting going. It was rich in vitamins and light on dignity. Arag gave Mongol riders energy and courage, or at least gave them something to blame when their courage failed. Historians still argue whether the alcohol content was strong enough because of buzz or if that was just psychological bravery at work. Either way, it was your lunch beverage of choice, unless you had access to boiled tea, which, let's be honest, was mostly boiled horsehair if prepared in a hurry. As you know your borts, your stomach accepts its fate. It's not glamorous, but it's dependable, and in the dependable keeps you alive. You think back to stories of riders who forgot their rations boiling strips of saddle leather or trying to catch marmots with a sling. You're not that desperate, yet there were variations in these meals depending on which route you were riding. Northern stations might offer reindeer meat, southern routes closer to China sometimes included rice or bean paste luxuries compared to your portable chewing log. Still, this is the steppe, not a banquet hall. The horse snorts, perhaps in agreement, or maybe in envy. Mongol horses, compact and sturdy, were known for eating almost anything. Grass, bark, even moss. You'd heard tales of couriers sharing bourse with their horses in emergencies, though you suspect the horses were less enthusiastic about fermented milk. Suddenly, something crunches beneath your saddlebag. You shift and pull out a flat cake, crumbly at the edges. It's borsig fried dough, often dipped in melted butter or honey. When available, yours is plain, and by now cold, but it has a delicate sweetness and a memory of softness. You savor it like a gift from a kind stranger. Borsig was a staple when supplies were good. Nomads made it in bulk during stays at winter camps, and couriers sometimes carried it alongside dried cheese and meat. You nibble slowly, imagining a warm campfire, the sizzling of dough and oil, the chatter of families swapping tales. It's almost enough to forget your legs are going numb. You shift again in the saddle, the horizon still stretches endlessly, and the next station is hours away. This is the real trick of Mongol courier life. It's not the eating, it's the riding after the eating. You are always on the move, and digestion is just a challenge you accept with each mile. Above, a pair of birds wheel lazily. You imagine they're waiting for you to drop something, a bit of jerky, maybe a crust of bread. But you're careful. Nothing is wasted out here. Every crumb counts. Some days you dream of soup, thick, steaming, fragrant, not the reality of soup on the step-off in water with a bone waved over it, but the fantasy. Maybe even a chunk of turnip. That's dreaming big. You chew the final piece of borsig and sigh. You've eaten worse. You've gone longer without. You've tasted stranger things in the name of nutrition. Looking at you, pickled mare intestine. Lunch on the Mongol yam is not about enjoyment. It's about energy, about fuel, and maybe, in its own weird way, about bonding with your fellow couriers, with your horse, with every ancestor who bit into a slab of borts and said, "Well, at least it won't kill me." You flick the reins, the horse understands. You're back in motion, the road stretching like ribbon across the land. The pouch on your belt swings with each step. A little lighter, a little emptier, but you're full enough to keep going. Ahead lies the next meal, the next message, and the next mystery meet. The path winds gently toward a shallow valley where a plume of smoke curls lazily into the pale afternoon sky. You smile not because you know what the smoke means, but because anything rising vertically on the steppe is either a ger or a bird, and either one might offer a break from chewing boards. As your horse slows, you catch the distinctive round silhouette of a Mongolian ger tucked between a few wind-worn boulders. The walls are white felt, the door painted a faded red, and just outside, a sheep watches you with a judgmental gaze. you dismount stiffly. The man who emerges to greet you is middle-aged, bearded, and humming something tuneless. He doesn't ask your name. He doesn't ask where you've come from. He simply gestures you inside. This is Mongol hospitality. Unspoken, unquestioned, and sometimes served with things still blinking inside the gear. It's warm and dim. The scent of boiled mutton saturates the air, wrapped in smoky notes and a hint of wool. You settle cross-legged on a felt mat, while your host dips a ladle into a bubbling pot suspended over the central fire. Lunch is already waiting. It's meat. It's always meat. The Mongol diet was a tribute to livestock. Sheep, goats, horses, camels. If it grazed, it probably got stewed at some point. Today's meal is sweven noodles fried with mutton, thick and greasy and mildly gray, but the smell, comforting in the most primal way. Your host passes you a wooden bowl. No words exchange. He hands you a knife to not for defense, but for carving your meat, because Mongol cuisine doesn't believe in dainty. You dig in. The noodles are sticky, slightly rubbery, and clumped like old scrolls. The mutton, chewy, fatty, perfect. It's not fine dining, it's staying alive dining, and you need it. You eat with focus. Mongol postal riders didn't get many slow lunches, so when the moment came, you savored it. Today is a small miracle: timing, proximity, kindness, and bold things, lots of bold things. In the corner of the ger, a child plucks at a stringed morin-core, its horse-head scroll watching you silently. The gentle drone of the strings mixes with the crackle of the fire. You pause mid-bite. This is peace. If peace were slightly greasy, across from you, your host finally speaks. The Khan rides fast. You nod. He's not wrong. Genghis Khan famously maintained that messages should move faster than horses get tired, and possibly your arteries, but it's working. After a few more bites, the host offers you something new. A tiny cup, wooden, filled with something golden and thick. You recognize a tiram, a type of clotted cream scraped from the top of boiled milk. It's rich, slightly sweet, and surprisingly good with the charred ends of your mutton. You try not to eat it all in one go, but your spoon disagrees. Historians still debate the exact nutritional makeup of traditional Mongol meals. Some say the fat-heavy, protein-packed diet helped couriers maintain energy and warmth. Others argue that it simply matched the environment, a place where vegetables were mythical and winter came in sideways. You've never seen a vegetable on the yam once. A fellow courier claimed to have eaten a carrot. Everyone laughed until he described it as crunchy air. He was never trusted again. You finish your meal and lean back outside. The wind scrapes at the ger's sides. Inside, the warmth holds you like a warm blanket. Your host brings out one final offering. A pinch of salt, handed to you ceremonially. It's a traditional parting gesture, a sign of respect, and a subtle reminder: never ride hungry, never ride ungrateful. You nod your thanks, and he nods back, already turning to tend the fire. You step back into the wind. The air has cooled, and the sheep is still watching you like you owe it money. You mount your horse, heavier now, but with that slow-burning strength that only a hot meal can provide. The road stretches again. You turn once to see the ger shrinking behind you, smoke blending into the sky. That brief moment of kindness, of meat and music, now tucked into your memory like a well-folded scroll. Lunch wasn't complicated. It wasn't pretty. but it was enough. The wind picks up again, tugging at your sleeves and stinging your cheeks with grit. You're well fed now, or at least better fed than you were. Your horse seems to sense it too, trotting a little faster, ears perked. The road is still long, but at least now your stomach isn't trying to eat your spine. A few hours pass. The sky grows pale and bleached, typical of the high steppe when the sun forgets how to commit. The terrain flattens again into what feels like a forever plain, the kind of landscape where your brain starts narrating its own daydreams just to pass the time. Eventually, hunger scratches faintly at the door again. Not the deep hunger from before, just that slow creeping thought, is there anything to nibble? You reach into your side pouch, the one you try to forget about because what's in there was never meant to be exciting. It's just arrowroll, dried cheese curds. To call them cheese might be generous. Imagine yogurt left to dry in the sun for 3 weeks, then forgotten under a saddle, then found and declared still good. That's arrowroll. But hey, it's got protein, it lasts forever, and technically it counts as food. You pop a small chunk into your mouth, it fights back. Arrowroll is famously hard. You're pretty sure if you dropped one, it would bounce. Mongol kids cut their teeth on these literally. Some modern historians compare them to candy, others to medieval jawbreakers. You suspect neither of those historians ever tried to eat one in a windstorm while on horseback. There were dozens of regional variations of arrowroll across the empire. Some were made from goat's milk, others from sheep, yak, even camel. Some were sour, some salty, some sweetened with a hint of honey. Few were very lucky or very high-ranking. Yours taste like chalk that once heard a rumor about milk. You chew slowly, letting your tongue do the work. Not much choice, really. One friend's theory suggests that Mongol couriers used arrowroll not just for sustenance, but as a form of time-keeping, eating one chunk every few hours to mark the passing day. You doubt that's true, but it does feel like eating one. Takes about 2 hours anyway. Your next station is still far off. You can't see it yet, but you know it's out there. Another wooden hut, another tired man with a pot and a horse and a story you'll probably forget before you finish your next ride. Your eyes drift to the landscape, nothing but grass, sky, and a few errant clouds shaped like regrets. You shift in the saddle, trying to get comfortable with a pouch full of rocks and a mouth full of brick cheese. It's in moments like this that you wonder, why did Mongol couriers bother carrying such rough food? Couldn't they have packed something softer, easier? The answer, of course, is durability. Arrowroll doesn't spoil. You could drop it in a river, bury it, leave it in a hot tent still edible. In the vast, unforgiving terrain of the empire, that kind of reliability was everything, and besides, it's not like the Mongols were known for tender pastries or delicate soufflés. Historians still argue whether arrowroll was an acquired taste or simply a necessity endured without complaint. You suspect it's both. After all, everything tastes fine when your alternative is nothing. You stop to rest your horse near a weathered stone marker, etched with symbols so old no one really remembers what they mean. Maybe a territory boundary. Maybe just someone's version of graffiti. You chew another piece of arrowroll. It hasn't gotten softer. You begin to suspect it's getting harder. Beside you, your horse lowers its head to nibble on some grass. You envy that. Grass at least looks tender. To break the monotony, you reach for your emergency bundle of cloth wrap, handful of ul bouv, traditional Mongol biscuits, often used more in ritual than for eating. Flat, dry, and oddly decorative. They're stacked during celebrations, but out here they're just backup calories. You snap one in half, it echoes. The biscuit tastes like dry flour and quiet resignation, but still food. You dip it in a bit of melted arl to soften it. It does not soften. By now, your jaw is doing more exercise than the rest of your body. You take a long drink of water from your skin to wash it all down. Not airag this time, just plain, glorious water untouched by fermentation, a rare luxury in a world where most liquids fizz without asking permission. You remount and continue, feeling the weight of the arl still in your belly like a quiet passenger. Lunch on the yam was never about joy, it was about survival, predictability, and whatever wouldn't make you sick in the middle of nowhere. And when the meal wasn't hot or hearty, it was just hard and enduring, like the writers themselves. And so you rye. The arl rattles gently in your pouch, probably plotting its next ambush. Ahead, the road stretches on like a promise and a dare. You squint into the wind and chew. Still, eventually you crest a slow, grassy ridge and spot the outline of the next rest post, one of the many humble relay stations dotting the vast Mongol network. From afar, it looks like a squat box dropped into a sea of grass. Up close, it smells like horses, charcoal, and meat dreams. This station is smaller than the last. No gear this time, just a wooden hut with a sloped roof and a hitching post leaning at a worrying angle. A lone dog watches your approach with the suspicion of someone who's had their jerky stolen before. You dismount, legs stiff and hips whispering betrayal. The station keeper greets you with a nod that could mean hello or don't sit on my woodpile. You hand over your satchel, and he gestures you inside with a flick of his chin. You've learned not to expect variety, but still you hope. Inside the hut, it's cool and shadowed. You lower yourself onto a flat bench, while the keeper fumbles with a soot-stained pot near the hearth. Something stews, something always stews, and next to it, a kettle releases thin coils of smoky steam. The keeper, with the silent skill of someone who's done this 1,000 times, ladles out a scoop of broth and drops into squat dumplings booze. You realize, or something very much like it, doughy, crescent-shaped, and faintly glistening with grease. You hold the bowl in your hands, letting the steam rise into your face like a sleepy cloud. The dumplings are still slightly firm, and you bite into one cautiously. Inside, there's minced mutton, onion, and maybe a mystery herb. Possibly nettle, possibly accident. It's delicious, not because it's expertly made, oh no. These dumplings have been boiled to within an inch of their doughy lives, but they're warm, filling, and soft. Your jaw sends its sincere thanks as you chew. The keeper sets down a tin cup filled with smoky tea. It's dark, bitter, and unmistakably sautéed, sea-salted milk tea. A step staple. There's not much ceremony, just bricks of green tea boiled with water, salt, and milk, often from a yak or goat, and occasionally even a sheep that had opinions. The first sip always shocks you. You expect sweet, you get briny barn, but somehow it works. The tea coats your tongue and warms your chest. Like drinking a hut from a gruff uncle, historians still debate whether Mongol tea was originally ceremonial, medicinal, or just a byproduct of too much dairy. What's clear is that it became a daily fixture for couriers. It was liquid fuel. It restored moisture after hours of dusty riding and provided just enough caffeine to stop your brain from blending with the saddle. Your host doesn't speak much, most don't, but he does raise an eyebrow when he sees how fast you finish your dumplings. A sign of appreciation, or perhaps just a reminder not to choke. He offers seconds. You accept them like someone accepting an award. While he boils another batch, you look around. The hut is sparse. A saddle propped in the corner, a bowl hanging above the door, a dog curled near the hearth who occasionally opens one eye to judge you. A few dried meats hang from the rafters, twisting gently in the draught. You wonder what it's like to live in one of these way stations full-time, seeing dozens of riders pass through each week, feeding them, swapping horses, never leaving. Then again, maybe it's not so different from being a rider. Just another cog in the great machine of empire. Just more meat, fewer miles. The new dumplings are even better, probably because your expectations have been trampled so thoroughly that anything soft feels gourmet. You bite into one and find a hint of garlic or onion or something sharp and alive. You ask the keeper what's in them. He shrugs. Sheep, fair enough. As you finish, the tea cools in your cup. The wind howls against the hut, setting the loose wood to creaking like an old ship. It's a strange comfort, this meal in the middle of nowhere. No feasting hall, no golden plates, just to people some dough and a lot of boiled opinions. You gather your things. The station keeper hands you a small paper-wrapped bundle. 3 more dumplings and a small flask of tea, still warm, a gift for the road, or a bride to write a favorable scroll. Either way, your gratitude is real. You step outside, blinking in the light. The dog stands to see you off, possibly out of politeness, possibly to see if you dropped anything edible. You mount up, touch heavier now with dumplings that have been through things. Riding again, you bite into one. It's cooled already, the dough now a bit tough, but still rich and greasy and unmistakably Mongol. It's odd how much joy you find in these small parcels of boiled meat. But that's courier life. The food doesn't just feed you. It paces you, marks the miles, and softens the road. You suck the last of the tea from the flask and grin. You've had worse lunches. You will have worse again. But for now you ride, belly warm and path clear, with the flavor of salty milk and garlic still dancing on your tongue. The wind shifts slightly, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of smoke, meat, something very cooked, very intentional, and possibly very edible. Your stomach perks up like a rabbit in tall grass. You nudge your horse forward, following the scent with the enthusiasm of someone whose last warm meal involved salted milk and dumplings of mysterious origin. Soon, you spot another small encampment, not a relay station this time, but a cluster of riders who look like they've stopped for rest or for something more sacred. Lunch cooked over an actual fire. You slow your approach, and one of them nods in greeting. That's enough. You're welcome. You dismount and catch a full view of the meal in progress. A large, blackened pot swings from a crossbar over glowing coals. Beside it, A spit was something turning slowly, a fatty slab of mutton, dripping into the fire with a series of sizzles that sound suspiciously like applause. It smells like survival, patience, and triumph. You join the semicircle of riders without speaking, one of them a thick-necked man with a braid down his back and no eyebrows to speak of hands you a flat wooden tray with a dollop of fat and what appears to be bone marrow. You nod in gratitude. This, you know, is an honor. Mongols believed in the value of fat. In a harsh environment with minimal vegetables and minimal time for leisurely digestion, fat was energy. Fat was flavor. Fat was fortune. You scoop some of the marrow onto a flat piece of bread like gamir, then top it with a thin slice of roast lamb. The bread is dense, cooked in ashes, and possibly invented just to transport marrow from bowl to mouth. Your first bite is rich and smoky, the lamb tender enough to pull apart with your fingers. The marrow melts, creamy and primal, coating your tongue in calories. You almost forget that you're sitting in the middle of the wine-scraped plains, leaning against a horse that smells like decisions. Someone passes around a small pot of rendered fat infused with salt and herbs. You dip your bread into it carefully, Mongol butter, essentially, though with more bark than your average condiment. And here it is, the heart of Mongol culinary philosophy. Not presentation, not complexity, but fuel. Everything must burn well either in the fire or in your stomach. Historians still argue whether the high-fat diet was based on necessity or preference. Some say the steppe forced it. Others argue the Mongols craved it, trained on it from birth. Modern nutritionists might raise an eyebrow at your current lunch, but they've probably never ridden 100 kilometers before breakfast. As the mutton cooks down, a few of the riders trade stories, half in laughter, half in yawns. You catch only fragments. Someone's horse tried to eat a tent rope. Someone else got chased by a goose in Bukhara. Mongol humor, it turns out, involves a lot of livestock and mild regret. One rider produces a small ceramic jar and uncorks it dramatically. The smell escapes instantly, sharp, sour, and weirdly inviting. It's kailmag, a caramelized milk cream mixed with sugar and sometimes nuts. Though you doubt nuts made it to this version, you get a spoonful. It's thick, rich, and so sweet it almost erases the mutton's ghost from your mouth. Almost. For a moment you sit quietly with your bowl, your bread, and your slightly greasy fingers. The fire crackles. Horses snort nearby. Above you, the sky stretches in that never-ending Mongol way, soft blue smeared with threadbare clouds. You've stopped checking the time, not because you're lazy, but because time here is measured in distance, in meals, in how much fat still lines your pouch. And in the end, lunch is less about hunger and more about momentum. You wipe your hands on a cloth square tied to your saddle. The riders begin packing up. A few clink cups together in farewell. One tosses you a small pouch, dried fat cubes and crushed seeds, wrapped tight in cloth. Travel snacks. You nod your thanks again. Back on the saddle, the meat sits comfortably in your gut, a slow burn fueling your next stretch. You ride with a kind of after-lunch satisfaction, blessedly full, mildly sleepy, and aware that if you stop moving, you might actually nap on the horse. The wind picks up again, of course it does. The steppe stretches on, but the taste of marrow lingers. You touch your pouch and feel the rations waiting there. Fat cubes, sweet milk paste, and bread tougher than your boots. You're set for the next 100 miles, or at least until the next whiff of cooking meat distracts you again. Hours roll by like low hills on the horizon, and soon you're navigating a flatter, rockier stretch of land where the wind whistles differently, more like it's got opinions now. You're beginning to think Mongol weather has moods. You spot another gare ahead, but this one is ... different. No smoke curling from its chimney, no sound of animals or metal pots clanking, just stillness. You hesitate for a second, but your horse, apparently uninterested in ghost stories, plods forward with full confidence. As you approach, a man steps out, older, lean, and wearing a coat the same color as the dust. He nods slowly, his expression unreadable. You dismount and offer a traditional nod and return, chin down. Then up, he waves you in, wordlessly. You duck through the door flap and are hit with an aroma you did not expect. Boiled sheep's head. Oh, yes, you've heard the stories. Blue dog and cork hog, mighty more famous, the meat cooked inside the animal's own skin or with hot stones in a metal pot. But today you are greeted by something much more intimate. A head of a sheep, boiled whole, presented on a tray like it's the guest of honor. You sit slowly, carefully, respectfully, because in Mongol tradition the head is not just a meal, it's a statement, a symbol of respect and status. Offering it to a traveler is an ancient sign of hospitality. Turning it down, well, let's just say your postal privileges might be revoked. The older man carves it with a practiced hand. He slices cheek meat first, soft, tender, surprisingly delicate. Then he offers you the tongue, which is considered a choice cut. You accept it with 2 hands, bow slightly, and take a bite. It melts, salty, rich, slightly gelatinous, but clean. The eyes, you'll be relieved to hear, are not served, not yet. That's usually for special guests or someone the host is trying to impress or perhaps test. You're not sure what you are yet. You glance around the gare, chewing. It's modest, one small altar, a few horsehair ropes, a single iron pot hanging from the central beam. No one else inside. The man speaks finally. His voice is deep and slow, like a drum being played underwater. He says only, "You ride far." You nod. "Far enough." He doesn't ask for scrolls or satchels. He doesn't care what you're carrying. Right now, the sheep's head is the only agenda on the table. Historians still debate how central meals like this were to diplomacy in the Mongol Empire. Some argue that food rituals shaped entire regional alliances. Others believe they were simply a holdover from older steppe traditions. Either way, you don't mess around with this kind of lunch. Your host passes you a small dish of boiled organs. You take a few pieces, kidney, maybe liver. One of them might be lung, which is ... airy. You try not to think too hard about it. A sauce made from vinegar and wild onions sits beside the meat. You dip a strip of flesh into it, sharp, sour, refreshing in the way only vinegar can be after you've eaten something that you use to blink. And then, of course, comes the broth, clear, golden, slightly oily, the kind that has been simmering since sunrise, if not last week. It tastes to bone, salt, and depth, like it could cure minor heartbreak and horse fatigue. You sit quietly, sipping the hot liquid, steam clouding your vision as your muscles begin to ease. Meals like this weren't daily affairs for couriers. They were occasional blessings, full stops in a life built on constant forward motion. The sheep's head isn't just protein, it's warmth, recognition, and the comfort of being seen, even for a moment, as more than just a delivery mechanism. You're not just a writer now, you're a guest, an honored one. The man carves more meat, setting small piles on a flat piece of bark between you. No plates, no cutlery, just hands, respect, and the gentle tearing of slow-cooked flesh. You think back to your last few lunches, cheese curds that resisted civilization, jerky that could injure, and milk that fizzed without permission, and now this, a simple, primal feast, unexpected, unscheduled, and completely welcome. Outside, the wind changes again, the light softens, the kind of evening glow that makes everything look like a painting made of sand and nostalgia. You finish the last of the broth, your fingers oily but satisfied. The host pours you one more cup of salted tea, gives a grunt that might mean you're all right, and turns back toward the fire. You nod your thanks, he nods back, you step outside. Into the fading sun, your horse waits patiently, tail swishing. You're slower mounting this time, not because you're tired, but because you're full. Full in a way that's not just about food. As you ride on, the taste of sheep's head lingers not unpleasantly. And something else lingers too. The reminder that out here, food is more than fuel. It's language, it's status, it's story. You smile to yourself. That was one heck of a story. You ride on in near silence now, the warmth of the sheep's head meal still glowing somewhere in your middle. The light begins to shift flatter, softer, more golden, the shadows lengthen behind you, and the wind that once tried to pry open your coat now seems to nudge you gently onward. But the road isn't always this generous. After another hour or two of steady travel, the land changes. The tall grasses give way to patches of dry, cracked earth. The color bleeds out of the landscape until you're surrounded by tones of beige, ash, and grit. The only sounds now are the rhythmic plodding of your horse and the occasional creak of your saddle straps. This is the part where you start doing the inventory, not of messages, not of distances, but of food. You pause at a small rise, hop off, and check your satchel again. It's a humble collection now. A few crumbs of Gamir bread, a withered scrap of mutton jerky, and that one last piece of arul you've been avoiding for emotional reasons. No relay station in sight, you sigh, time for the courier's plan C. Slinging your satchel back over your shoulder, you dismount and begin scouting the area. It's not full panic yet. This is a known stretch of road, just one where resources are famously thin. Riders have shared stories of skipping whole meals out here. Others talk about the emergency route. You crouch near a small outcrop, brush away some loose gravel, and there it is, thin shoots, like withered scallions poking from the dry earth, wild onions. You yank a few. They're tiny, pungent, and smell promising in a sharp, this will do kind of way. You chew the first one raw. It tastes like a dare. Wild onions have saved more than one courier. They're not gourmet, but they're edible, and once you chew past the bitterness, they offer a kind of greenish reassurance that not everything on the steppe has abandoned you. You keep walking the perimeter of the hill, searching. Eventually, you spot another hopeful sign, a patch of room roots, a kind of wild steppe rhubarb. Some writers claim it's good for the digestion. Others say it's good for clearing your mind. Mostly, it tastes like sour grass and regret. Still, you nibble, and that counts as lunch. Historians still argue whether Mongol riders were trained to forage or if it was just something they picked up by necessity. Some say experienced couriers carried waxed leaves to wrap and store wild greens. Others claim they used the reins of their horses to pull up clumps of edible moss when desperate. No one really knows. You walk back to your horse with your foraged feast clutched in both hands, a few onions, 2 roots, and the vague promise of a meal that probably won't poison you. Your horse snorts, as if to say, really, you sit beside a half-buried stone and begin to eat. It's not satisfying, it's not warm, it's barely lunch, but it's something. You gnaw on a root while watching the sky churn slowly with the late-day wind. Overhead, a single hawk rides a current, scanning for field mice or other things that forgot to hide. Your thoughts wander as your teeth keep working. There were stories of couriers who boiled their boots. Real ones, the leather, softened with water and heat, became a sort of gluey soup that could keep you upright for another day or two. You're not there yet, but you're aware it's an option. The last bit of wild onion goes down with a wince. You dig in your pouch and finally pull out the stubborn chunk of Arl, the hardened cheese that's basically an edible fossil. You bite, it doesn't break. You suck on it instead, letting time do what teeth can't. This is survival food, travel food. There is no richness here, no fire, no host pouring tea. Just you, your roots, your cheese brick, and the whispering grass. You sit for a moment longer before remounting. The horizon hasn't changed much, still wide, still endless, but your legs are steadier now, and your stomach, while unimpressed, is quiet. There's a certain pride that comes from scraping a meal out of nothing. You didn't feast, you didn't bawl, but you rode and you endured. And that, in Mongol terms, is a kind of victory. As you ride on, the wind seems a little less sharp, and the world unfolds again, inch by inch. You're not full, but you're functional. You're not feasting, but you're fed, and sometimes that's more than enough. By now, the land begins to subtly shift again, trading beige for bursts of color-low shrubs with purple blooms, patches of wild barley dancing in the breeze, and, more importantly, trade routes. You're nearing one of the arteries of the Mongol Empire's vast Silk Road system, and that means food, real food mighty nearby. Not just survival scraps, but something touched by foreign flavors, touched by history. You press forward. Before long, you reach a small post town nestled at a crossroads. Unlike the lonely relay stations, this place bustles gently, a few market stalls, an open courtyard, and the unmistakable sound of copper pots clanking. You dismount, tether your horse, and follow your nose. A vendor squats behind a low table draped in fabrics from Khwarezm, selling what looks like steamed buns, but the scent wafting from the basket, it's honey and pepper or ginger or both. You hand over a small copper coin from your riding pouch. The vendor nods and hands you one. It's warm, soft, sweet on the outside, spiced and savory in the middle, ground lamb, crushed almonds, a whisper of clove. You take a bite and close your eyes. The spice lingers. This is Silk Road cooking, an edible handshake between empires. Mongols didn't just conquer, they connected. Through war and trade and dispatches like the one probably still bumping around in your satchel, they made it possible for peppercorns from India to end up inside a lamb bun in Central Asia. Historians still argue whether Genghis Khan truly understood the cultural magnitude of this East-West fusion, for if it was simply a byproduct of controlling all the roads, but you, right now, are just glad he did. You spot a man pouring something from a tall, hammered bronze kettle into small cups saffron tea. You approach. He offers you one without a word. You sip, and it's like inhaling a poem. Earthy, golden, slightly bitter, with the warmth of something that took months to arrive and, to seconds, to vanish from your cup. Saffron isn't cheap, which means this town sees wealth pass through merchants, envoys, even royalty. But Mongol postal couriers, you get a pass. You're part of the bloodstream. Further down the road, another vendor waves you over. He's grilling skewers of meat over a clay brazier, and your stomach, which only recently forgave you for the rhubarb roots, perks up like a loyal hound. You try one small cubes of goat marinated in vinegar and honey, dusted with crushed coriander seeds. Each bite is smoky, tender, and gently sweet, with the kind of complexity you forgot food could have. You chew slowly, reverently. Mongol cuisine on the road was mostly utilitarian, but here you glimpse what happened when empire met exchange, when spices traveled farther than armies, when almonds and sesame and dried apricots made their way into recipes never meant for them and somehow made everything better. Your next stop is a small open-air kitchen with a bubbling pot of spiced lentil porridge, thick and golden brown, flecked with something red, probably chili, probably dangerous. You ask for a small bowl. The first spoonful is mild, the second wakes you up, the third you stop counting. It's not Mongol in origin, probably Persian or Indian or somewhere between. But that's the thing about the Silk Road, it didn't care where flavors came from. It only cared that they moved. You sit at a low wooden bench, bowl in hand, watching a group of children run between wagons, while an old man sings a slow song about camels and sandstorms. You take another sip of saffron tea and feel a little dazed, not from exhaustion, but from satisfaction and something else, connection. This food wasn't made for speed. It was made for people who stayed a while, who traded, who told stories. You, however, have to ride, always rye. Still, you linger a moment longer. One last bun, warm and fragrant. One more skewer, smoky and rich. And then back to your horse, who eyes you with clear judgment for not bringing leftovers. You mount again, belly full and breath sweet with spices. You ride on, the town behind you, the breeze tugging at your scarf, and the taste of cardamom still curling in your mouth. Sometimes the Mongol yam felt like a hard path through hard land, but then came days like this, when the wind carried spice, and lunch was more than fuel, it was memory. The road rolls on under your horse's hooves, a rhythmic beat like a worn-out drum played by the wind. The spice still lingers in your mouth, faint hints of clove, coriander, maybe even dried fig. But soon the wind replaces the scent with something simpler, older, smoke, leather, and incense. You spot the dome roof first, shimmering slightly in the heat, then the wooden crossbeam, then the quiet figure in brown robes. A Nestorian monk, you'd heard of them. Christian monks scattered across the Mongol territories, from Persia to China. Their churches looked like homes. Their robes looked like dust, but their meals, rumor had it, were oddly refined. The monk watches you approach, neither surprised nor particularly enthusiastic. He seems to know riders don't stop unless they must. You dismount respectfully, hungry. He asks with a voice like gravel softened by time, always. He invites you inside a small adobe dwelling round, dark and cool like a shaded pocket of history. Incense curls from a tiny copper dish. Icons hang on the wall, faded but serene. You sit cross-legged on a cushion, and the monk begins to serve. No mutton today, no dried cheese or smoked meat. Instead, lentils boiled slow and long with garlic and herbs, a small plate of flat bread torn by hand, and most shockingly honeyed pastries. You blink, you chew, you question if you're dreaming. The lentils are simple but perfect, soft, earthy, and laced with cumin. The flatbread is warm and brushed with a bit of olive oil or perhaps sesame, and the pastries, dense, sweet, and sticky, made with crushed nuts and wildflower honey. Historians still debate just how widespread Nestorian monastic communities were within Mongol territory. Some say they were tolerated for strategic reasons. Others believe the Mongols were more spiritually open than commonly thought. But all agree these monks could cook. The monk sits across from you, eating slowly, his eyes half closed. You feel no pressure to talk, just quiet chewing, peaceful breath. A calm you didn't know you'd been missing. Outside, a bell rings faintly, not a call to prayer, just a signal of time, of pacing. You look toward your satchel, still there, still full of unspoken words and unseen orders. You dip a final piece of bread into the lentils, grateful for a meal that doesn't require knowing boiling or bartering, just presence. Afterward, the monk offers you a cup of rosewater tea, delicate, floral, and unlike anything you've had on the yam. It makes your chest feel warm, your shoulders lower slightly. It makes your eyelids a little heavier. This isn't food meant for writers. It's food meant for reflection, for prayer, for stopping. You almost want to stay, but you don't because the road is calling. And it doesn't use words, it just leans into your spine and whispers, "Go." You stand, bow lightly, and thank the monk. He nods, places a small packet into your hand wrapped in palm leaves. It contains 2 of the honeyed pastries. For the road, you mount up again, your horse flicking its ears like it's been dozing through holiness. You ride on, the tea lingers, the honey clings to your tongue, and in your pouch now sits a memory, inedible form, sacred, sticky, and utterly unexpected. You've now entered the part of your journey where the road is less about terrain and more about negotiation, not with the earth or weather, but with people, curious, chatty, occasionally opportunistic people. The next station is nestled in a shallow river bend, framed by willows and a patch of tilled ground someone once ambitiously called a garden. As you ride in, children pause their play to stare at you. One yells, "Courier," and the others echo like you're a celebrity, which is generous, considering your boots smell like horse and vinegar. A woman emerges from a nearby tent and waves you over. She's got the look of someone who knows every traveler by name and most of their secrets. You dismount and smile cautiously. "Hungry?" she asks, already walking back toward the tent. Your stomach answers before you do. Inside, the tent is warm with wood smoke and bustling with pots. Several people sit along the walls, drinking, eating, bartering. You realize quickly this isn't just a home, it's a hub, a minor social checkpoint of the yam. And you, by virtue of your uniform, braid, and dust-crusted satchel, are the evening's entertainment. The woman sets down a white, low bowl. Inside, roasted chunks of goat, stewed lentils, and slices of soft egg tucked under scallion greens, and something pickled. It smells like effort, and possibly debt. You glance up. She's watching you closely, not with menace, but with interest. News from the north? She asks. Ah, here it is. This is one of those unspoken yam customs. Feed the courier, get the gossip. Mongol stations weren't just postal, they were social arteries. People traded stories for favors, for headlines, for a sense that the world beyond their valley still spun. You take a bite, tender goat, lemony pickled, turnip, warm lentils, heavenly. You nod between mouthfuls. The river froze late, you say. The wheat caravans are slow. That's not classified, but it's valuable. She smiles. She pours you morel broth light, fragrant, tinged with mushroom and something smoky. It's got depth, possibly even diplomacy. The others lean in. Questions come lightly. Has the southern road reopened? Any new taxes? What's the price of silver in Khotan? You answer sparingly, preserving the illusion that you know more than you do. You're not a historian. You just deliver the footnotes of history, one scroll at a time. Still, your words feed them like your meal feeds you. Someone offers you a hand-rolled dumpling, fat with herbs and mutton fat. You accept, knowing it's not just hospitality, it's a transaction. Meals are currency here. Historians still debate how much Mongol couriers influenced local politics simply by carrying news and offering scraps of it in return for a warm plate. Some say it shaped regional alliances. Others claim it was gossip with saddle bags. But out here, information is survival, and a well-fed courier is often a generous one. You finish your dumpling, wash it down with more mushroom broth, and begin to excuse yourself. The woman pats your arm. Wait. She hands you a bundle of wrapped bread and pickled garlic cloves for the road. If you remember anything more about Khotan, you smile, tuck the bundle into your pouch, and nod with exaggerated secrecy. Back on the saddle, the wind feels softer, your belly's full, your mind buzzing. As you ride out of earshot, you hear them already sharing what you said, embroidering it, embellishing it, breathing life into it like thread spun from your voice. Your lunch was more than food. It was payment. It was trust. It was a contract written in goat and lentils, and you'd honored it well. You ride for another hour as the sky folds into dusk, streaked with copper and a violet, so faint it seems borrowed from a dream. The air sharpens, cooler now, brushing your cheeks with that unmistakable scent of distance. Dry grass, old smoke, and the promise of sleep. Then, as if conjured by the road itself, you see it a larger outpost, almost a compound, with tall wooden fences, actual gates, and the flicker of lamplight through old parchment windows. This is no ordinary relay station. It's a Khan's relay palace, reserved for high-priority couriers, envoys, and those who travel under royal seal. You flash your braid and your seal as you ride up. The guards glance, nod, and wave you through. Inside, it feels quiet, controlled, important. A man in fine robes meets you at the entry. You're expected, he says. You're not entirely sure that's true, but it sounds magnificent, so you go with it. You're led to a side hall where a low table has already been set. The glow of lanterns fills the room with a honey-colored hush, and there, laid out in neat bowls and dishes, is what passes for luxury in the Mongol postal service. Roast lamb, crisp-skinned and glistening, lies in thick slices beside a dish of millet porridge, golden and flecked with dried apricots. A small clay pot holds yogurt, creamy and tangy, and beside it all a ceramic pitcher of warm goat's milk, sweetened with just a hint of date syrup. You sit, awed, not because you've never had lamb or porridge before, but because someone prepared it for you, and not in a way that involved a boot or a pouch. You take a bite of the lamb first, tender, spiced with cumin and what might be crushed juniper. It tastes deliberate. It tastes like someone thought about it. Then the millet porridge, nutty, soft, a little sweet from the apricots. Mongol nobles valued millet for its versatility and shelf life, but here it's transformed into something comforting, even celebratory, and that yogurt, a spoonful, is enough to hush every road-weary complaint you've ever had. Historians still argue about how standardized these royal outposts really were. Some describe them as bustling hubs with chefs and scribes. Others say most were glorified barns with ambition. But this one feels like a page from a sultan's travel diary. You sip the warm goat's milk last, sweet, creamy, and unnervingly soothing. You feel it trail down your throat like silk. You lean back, exhaling. Your satchel sits beside you, unopened. For now. Time pauses. The man in robes returns. More, he asks. You shake your head slowly. Perfect. He nods and sets a final touch before you, a small plate with candied ginger, imported, no doubt, via trade caravans. You take a single piece, chew slowly, and feel your tongue wake up in the best possible way. This place, for all its calm, holds weight. Every wall, every dish. Whispers of hierarchy, of systems built not just for war or conquest, but for movement, for function, for connection. And you are part of that, tired, dusty, and full of lamb. You rest a while longer. Then, gently, you rise. The man escorts you to a room where you may sleep if you wish, a privilege not offered at every stop. But you decline, not because you aren't tempted, but because you know the road doesn't wait. The next message must ride on. The next bite of food must come elsewhere before you leave. They offer a pouch of dried fruits and pressed yogurt, tablets, high-class rations. Not luxurious, but enduring, fit for the ride. You step out into the cold night, saddle your horse beneath a thin moon, and look once more at the light spilling from the relay palace windows. Then you ride, full, silent, grateful. Night deepens across the open land like a curtain slowly drawn. The moon is a thin blade overhead, and the stars scatter across the sky like broken flint. Your horse moves at a steady, unbothered pace. It hooves a soft metronome over hardened soil. This leg of the journey is the desert stretch, a region so dry and bare, makes your bones feel hollow. The wind here carries fine dust and silence, and everything edible is either long gone or carried with you. No gears, no outposts, just sky, sand, and your saddle. You reach into your pouch. Time for something familiar. Dried apricots from the relay palace, tough and sticky, but a mercy. You chew slowly. The sweetness unfurls like a sunbeam in your mouth, small, almost poetic, and gone in seconds. You count your remaining rations. To pressed yogurt, tablets, one handful of roasted barley, and a tightly wrapped square of fruit-tanned nut paste. Not exactly a feast, but you've had worse. The barley crunches like pebbles. You chew anyway, letting your saliva do the hard work. It was roasted weeks ago, probably in a flat iron pan over a low fire, warm from its goatskin pouch, but still precious. Hydration on this leg is about discipline, no gulps. Just measured sips between mouthfuls of whatever survives the ride, and then you reach for your pressed yogurt. The tablet is chalky, brittle, and dissolves on your tongue with a sour bite. You've never been sure if it's refreshing or vaguely punishing, but it gives you calcium, protein, and the illusion of variety. Historians still argue over the origins of this survival ration. Some say it predates Genghis Khan by centuries, passed down from older steppe tribes. Others believe it was developed specifically for military campaigns. Either way, it's been in a courier's diet longer than many dynasties lasted. The cold bites a little harder now. You pull your cloak tighter. Your horse hoofs in the dark, nostrils flaring steam. Suddenly, a sound in the distance, a hollow chime. You pause. It's not a bell, not metal. It's a wine-struck reed, perhaps, or an old prayer flag flapping against a stone. You press onward. There's no station here. Not until morning. You know a piece of the fruit and nut cake, its sweetness marred slightly by dessert grit. Still, it's dense, satisfying. Dried dates, crushed almonds, a touch of honey, all mashed together and wrapped in oilcloth. Sticky and resilient, much like yourself. You pass a dry riverbed. Cracked mud, old animal tracks. Nothing moves. You think about stories you've heard riders so desperate they cooked their saddle leathers, soaked them in tea, and ate them like soup. You still have barley. You're still far from that. Your horse slows, then picks up again. These animals, tough as the land itself, never complain. They eat grass, bark, weeds. Some say Mongol horses could survive on ice and curses. You take one last sip of water, one last apricot. You chew with reverence. This is what lunch looks like in motion. No fire, no host, just what you carry and what carries you. There's a strange rhythm to it. The body settles into a quiet acceptance. Chew, sip, right, chew again. There is no meal time in the desert, only moments when hunger rises high enough to warrant a break in motion. You look ahead. The stars reflect faintly in a basin of still air, maybe a mirage, maybe hope, and then you ride on, through the dark, the sand, and the echo of meals you've already half forgotten. The desert releases its grip at dawn. As light seeps back into the world, the terrain shifts ever so slightly from sand and rock to dry grass and earth-hugging scrub. You feel it first in your horse's gait, less hesitation, more purpose. You feel it in your stomach, too, the faint tickle of hope that maybe, just maybe, something warm awaits. You've barely slept, but that's the nature of this route. Sleep and meals blur on the yammed. You rye, you eat, you nap in moments stolen from time. But now, in the hazy glow of morning, you're drifting not just through land but through thought. You chew a crust of millet bread, left over from a palace outpost 2 stations ago. It's gone hard in your pouch, but you soak it in a sip of water, and it revives enough to be called bread again, just barely. And that's when it happens. Your mind drifts. Your chewing slows, and suddenly you're somewhere else entirely. Not the road, not the next meal, but daydreaming. A soft voice in your head says, "What if I wasn't writing right now?" You imagine yourself seated in a real kitchen, walls, a roof, maybe a cat. You imagine meals, actual meals laid out with care. not unwrapped in the wind. A pot of rice steamed with wild mushrooms, a bowl of broth spiced with anise, fresh cheese, not the kind that needs to be hammered before it can be eaten. You picture a fire, a friend, and the luxury of chewing slowly, not because the food demands it, but because the moment allows it. A courier doesn't live that way. Of course, you take another bite. The millet bread, now soggy and stubborn, snaps you back to the saddle. You ride past a row of stones standing like soldiers half buried in moss. No one knows who placed them here. Some say ancient shamans. Others think they're tomb markers, forgotten in empire after empire. You wonder what they ate and how fast they had to do it. A small breeze stirs the tips of the grass. In the distance, birds begin to sing. It almost feels like background music to your wandering thoughts. You remember a courier you once met who claimed to have dined in Karakoram, the capital. He spoke of steamed buns with duck, rice wine warm in copper pots, sweet melon slices chilled in snow. You half suspected he was lying, but part of you wanted to believe it. Historians still argue what daily meals were like in Karakoram under the Great Khans. Some claim it was lavish imported fruits, lavish feasts, cooks trained in every regional style. Others say it was simpler than legends suggest. But in your mind, it's whatever you're craving in that exact moment. Today, that's boiled eggs, real eggs with salt. Maybe a dash of crushed pepper. You sigh ... in your potch. There's a crumbled strip of horse jerky. You nibble it without enthusiasm. It's chewy, smoky, and tastes like commitment. You pass a small spring. The water glimmers between rocks, barely a stream. You dismount and let your horse drink. You kneel, refill your pouch, and splash your face. A cold shocks your skin awake. You sit, momentarily lost in the sound of trickling water. And there, in that sliver of calm, you unwrap the last honey pastry from the Nestorian monk. It's crushed, a bit oily, but still soft. You eat it slowly, half dream, half memory. The taste connects you to something bigger than yourself. Not just sweetness, but grace. Not all meals on the yam are function. Some are fragments of humanity left like breadcrumbs across an empire of need. As you mount up again, the thoughts stay with you. The food, the dream, the life you don't live, but still long for. You ride on, lips sticky with honey, mind sticky with longing. You're still just a courier. But for a few miles, you ride like someone who once had a kitchen. By late afternoon, the landscape begins to shift again subtly, almost shyly. The horizon that once felt like a straight line now begins to undulate. You spot clusters of low hills, taller grass, a few scrub trees leaning like old men into the wind, and then off to the side, almost hidden behind a slope, you see it, one last relay station. It's smaller than most, not quite a hut, not quite a tent, just a weathered wooden shelter tucked into the land like it's trying not to be noticed. A thread of smoke rises faintly from a tiny chimney. You nudge your horse gently. You're almost at the border post, the final checkpoint before this section of your route ends. One last meal, one last cup of tea. Then the satchel gets passed off, and someone else picks up where you leave off. You dismount, stretch your legs, they protest, and approach the hut. An older man in a wool cap steps out, squints at you, and waves. He doesn't ask your name, he knows the braid. Inside, it's dim and close. The walls are stacked with kindling and hides, a bow hung above the door. There's a pot on the fire, and it smells like barley soup, simple, hearty, and fragrant with a touch of fat. You sit on a wooden stool that creaks under you like it's complaining. The man ladles the soup into a clay bowl and offers it wordlessly. Then he sets down a side plate with slices of boiled potato, pickled carrot, and a small hunk of smoked fish river fish, probably. It's a modest meal, but it feels like a feast. You eat slowly. The soup is thick with barley and small shreds of mutton. The broth has been simmering all day, tasting of salt, herbs, and quiet survival. You soak the potato in it. Even the pickled carrot feels like a delicacy. Then, as you sip the last of your broth, the man still silent sits beside you with his own bowl. You eat together in peace. No questions, no stories. Just two couriers, or maybe a courier and a memory of one, sharing a bowl in the quiet. He pours salted tea from a dented copper pot. It's oversteeped and gritty, but it goes down warm. You accept it with a nod. Historians still debate what the final moments of a courier ride felt like, whether there was relief or pride or just numb exhaustion. You're not sure. Right now you just feel full. Not stuffed, not starving, just balanced. As you wipe your hands and gather your satchel, the man points to a simple blanket hanging near the door. Take it, he mutters. Nights are cold past the checkpoint. You accept it. Tuck it under your arm. You walk outside as the sun begins to tip its hat behind the hills. The horizon glows orange. Somewhere beyond it your replacement will be waiting. But for now, for just a moment, the road stops unraveling. You saddle your horse, slowly stretch once more, then look back at the hut, still quiet, still smoking gently, like it's sighing along with you. You ride the last stretch in silence, the satchel bumping softly against your sigh. You pass the final marker, a stone post half buried in grass sand. Exhale. That's it. That's the border. The satchel will be passed off. The message will live on. You reach into your pouch and pull out one last thing, the second honey pastry from the monk. Still soft, still sacred. You eat it with care, each bite the echo of all the meals before it. Barley, milk, marrow, dumplings, pickled roots, river fish, dried cheese, forbidden sweets. Meals of function, meals of grace, meals of desperation, meals of kindness, and now full, safe, and perhaps even changed. You let the final bite melt in your mouth. The horse walks slowly now, the wind softens. The shadows stretch long across the grass. Your job is done, your belly is come, and your road fades into memory, and now here you are at the edge of it all. The saddle beneath you no longer aches. The pouch, once bursting with tough bread and tougher cheese, now sits empty, relaxed against your sigh. You've traveled far across hills, deserts, and dream-like trading posts. You've chewed your way through history, one bite of jerky and one spoonful of broth at a time. The world quiets, your breath slows, no more questions, no more directions, just the memory of warm tea on your tongue and the hush of a fire crackling in the dark. The Mongol Empire may be gone, its postal routes long faded into dust and wind, but tonight you've wandered them again, not as a conqueror, but as a quiet companion to the road, a humble courier, riding with the rhythm of history under your feet and 1,000 forgotten meals behind you. The moon glides overhead now, full and soft, trailing silver threads over the land. Your horse walks slowly, even it seems to know the journey is over. Let your thoughts drift gently, like that steam rising from a wooden bowl at dusk. Let your body settle, like the embers beneath a stew pot. Let your eyes close. There are no more deliveries tonight, no more scrolls to protect, only sleep, only peace, only the road behind you, whispering its thanks.